Following Governor Pritzker's first budget address, we speak with several lawmakers from both sides of the aisle to get their reaction to the governor's address.
Governor Pritzker laid out a state of the state, laid out a budget proposal today. What's your initial reaction from what he presented?
I think it was an honest assessment of what the challenges are in the state today. That's a break from previous years, from what we've seen on budget day here in the General Assembly. So I give the governor some pretty high marks on being blunt and honest about the challenges we face. That, at least from my perspective, from chairing the committee, that's a good first step to start our process after the governor submits his budget.
And you talk about the process. I mean, that's going, then, of course, we have a couple of budget committees in the Senate. There'll be a number of hearings with state agencies, interests, stakeholders. What do you think some of the sticking points are? What do you think some of the concerns may be among folks who rely on a good budget? What do you think some of the concerns may be as we begin that process of analyzing them?
Well, I think the governor did a good job today of outlining the broad message of budget reform that we have to have. There's immediate concerns that begin in the current fiscal year, although I would say the administration has done a good job of managing their way through those immediate concerns. Then we have next fiscal year, which is what the governor outlined today in detail and provided the backup that makes up what his budget submission is. And then we have long-term challenges, which the governor also put on the table today. So I go back to comparing what Governor Pritzker did today to his predecessors of both parties, frankly, and it's a stark contrast. And I welcome that kind of blunt delivery of what our challenges are in the state. Too often times, I think budget address day gets mired down in what people want to hear. The easy stuff, it goes through a political lens and doesn't take into account the true structural nature of what we face today in Illinois. To the governor's credit, I think he did that in a very good way today. Not only did he outline the problems, he also put forward a set of solutions that represents the starting point. Of course, those things are going to be debated and most likely amended over the course of the next few months. But I give him some pretty high marks on the day today.
He proposed, and you can speak to this a little bit, the school education funding reform, which you passed and shepherded last year, was implemented. He's adding $375, is that right, $1 million to that. Ideally everybody would like to add more and more and more and more, but it is a step forward. What are your thoughts about that proposal with that level of investment that goes above what I think the bare minimum?
Yeah, having the governor, and just to show you I'm consistent, I said this last year, having the governor put that on the table on day one is an incredible positive for the state. So gone are the days when we fight over the scraps for schools. Gone are the days where we pump more money into a broken formula that actually makes inequity worse in Illinois. We did that for years, where the legislature would appropriate money, the governor would send out a press release and pat everybody on the back, but that formula was so broken and rotten that it actually made inequity among children in the state worse. So that's gone. And so having Governor Pritzker today go above what we anticipated, which was $350 million, an important piece of that is $50 million, again, for the property tax relief component of the bill. But going above and beyond what we expected, I think, is a big moment for Governor Pritzker. I think it shows his true commitment to the new formula and bridging that inequity gap that unfortunately is still quite profound in the state. We're on a different path, of course, but we still have so much more work to do.
Senator Dave Severson of the 35th District, tell us, what are your thoughts on the governor's budget address?
Well, unfortunately, it's kind of like we've seen in the past. We saw increased spending, increased taxes, and deferred pensions. So that's not a great beginning. There are some things in there that that we can work with, that are positive, but it's going to take some work.
So, any issues that are going to concern people in your district specifically?
Well, I think a number of the taxes are going to be a concern. Certainly, his support of gaming is good. That's something that's important to our area, and we want to move forward as quickly as that. The increased funding for higher education with our community colleges in northern Illinois, that's positive because they have certainly been hurt the last couple of years. So those are things I'm talking about where there's some positive things going on. But clearly the concern of deferring payments and all the different tax increases are going to have a negative impact when we're trying to grow our economy. So our job over the next 60 days is to try to work with the administration and see if we can make this budget more livable, one that can actually be sustainable and can help Illinois to move forward.
Senator Dale Ryder of the 55th District, tell us, what did you take away from the budget address?
I kind of divide the governor's budget speech into two parts. I think one part was him credibly laying out the financial challenges the state faces. Unfortunately, the second part was not as encouraging, quite frankly, because what the governor laid out as an answer are the same failed policies that put us in this position in the first place. Deferring pension payments, increased borrowing, increased taxes, and increased spending. That's not a path to prosperity. I think that's been proven here in Illinois over the last generation. It's my hope that the governor in the coming weeks will listen to constructive criticism that I'm sure that he will get, and will consider altering his path toward just taking us down a deeper financial hole.
Any specific concerns that would have to do with the residents of your district?
Yeah, I think that, no politician stands in front of a microphone and doesn't say, hey, you know what, the kids are my first priority. The governor's speech says we're going to take $800 million in pension payments that are supposed to be made this year, and we're not going to make those for years to come, which will cost tomorrow's taxpayers, the kids we keep talking about, cost them billions of dollars in additional payments. Now, they'll already have their own challenges, deciding how to fund their schools and their roads and all the things they want. They're also going to have the pleasure of paying our pension bill for us. That's irresponsible. It's reckless. That's not thinking about tomorrow, and we should not sign off on that.
Higher education?
The governor wants to spend more money on higher education. I'm for that. Again, find a politician who's not for spending more money on higher education, but you have to pay for it. And deferring pensions and borrowing $2 billion to help pay for that is not, it may be a solution for today, and it may be a solution for the next election cycle. It is absolutely not a solution for the next generation, and that's why we can't do that.
What are your thoughts?
DCFS is an important issue to me because it was in my district that Samaje Crosby, the 17-month-old girl, was killed a couple years ago. And evaluation of what happened there revealed a lot of gaps in DCFS, particularly in hiring and direct service personnel. So again, I'm cheered that Governor Pritzker wants to give DCFS enough funds to hire over 100 more individuals to work with families in crisis, to work with vulnerable families, and to prevent future tragedies like the death of Samaje Crosby.
Any other reactions that you have regarding the current state of the state, the governor's tone, whether or not there's a level of optimism?
There is a level of optimism. Again, speaking for the 43rd District, the governor talked about a big investment in infrastructure and transportation. That's essential to my district. Route 80 passes right through the heart of my district. Will County is the largest inland port in North America. If you want to be surrounded by semis, come up to the 43rd District, drive on Route 80, drive over the Des Plaines River Bridge, which is rated 6 out of 100. 6 out of 100. We dearly need financing to help rebuild that bridge and make Interstate 80 safe again. So again, bravo, Governor Pritzker, that you want to invest in vulnerable families, that you will want to invest in college affordability, and you want to invest in making our roads safe again.
Hey, we've got Senator Jim Oberweis from the 25th District. Tell us, what were your thoughts of the governor's budget address?
Well, I think J.B. Pritzker is a very good speaker. He presented well. Unfortunately, he has a very, very difficult situation to address. I'm not very happy with the proposal to see almost $1 billion in additional spending, almost $1 billion in additional taxes. and at the same time deferring approximately $800 million of pension payments that are due under the ramp plan that has been around. In addition to that, to fill the budget gap, he's proposing borrowing about $2 billion more. This is a pretty tough situation that we're in, and to me, we can't be increasing spending by $1 billion. We need to be cutting spending to make things right for Illinois, to stop losing population. I mean, we've lost people now 5 years in a row. We're losing jobs. It hurts the average Illinois citizen. And this is all coming on top of a $15 minimum wage increase that I'm afraid it will help some people, but it's also going to mean that many people lose their jobs, and those who lose their jobs, it's a disaster. Some of the Democrats keep talking about, the minimum wage job, you can't feed a family for it. Well, of course not. That's the whole point. It's a minimum wage. It's an entry-level job so that you can move on to get better jobs, better paying jobs. So this idea that minimum wage is a ticket into perpetual poverty is just fundamentally wrong. That's not the way it works. These are learning jobs, training jobs, and it should give an opportunity to all. So the governor has promised to work with the Republicans, the other side of the aisle. So far, we haven't seen any evidence of that on the minimum wage. We're hoping that when it comes to the budget, we'll have an opportunity to be at the table. We'll have an opportunity to discuss some other options that might be better for the long-term growth of the state of Illinois.
Tell us who these people are that are going to get a wage increase, where they may have their contractors with the state, but tell me what they do. You've met them.
So there's been 1.4 million direct minimum wage workers across the state of Illinois who currently make $8.25 an hour. And if you put that into context of a full-time minimum wage worker, it's about $17,000 a year, which is not enough money if they have children that they like to send to college, or if they like to save for a pension, if they like to have an emergency take shape and they're living check to check. How do they repair their vehicles? How do they stay on their jobs if they can't get the transportation that's needed? So it's that everyday hardworking person that we see, or we may look over, that's actually working so that they're not relying on government assistance, but they just don't have enough. And then there's a little spillover that goes with that as well. It's the mom or the dad that's working, he's in school, he's had children in childcare that need childcare services. So you have different levels of poverty, and you have different levels of those who are making minimum wage or making around the minimum wage threshold that still keeps them at the poverty levels. They're not middle class. They're not considered middle class. They can't make their ends meet, and it's important that we pay them for the work that they're doing.
And so regarding some of those state folks where the money is going to be reflective of that, we're talking about people who are home health care workers, right? People who are working with people with disabilities, jobs that are incredibly tough physically, but at the same time also require a lot of out-of-pocket expenses like driving from one place to the other and things like that. So those people, this budget accepts that those people will see an increase in it.
Yeah, so we're talking about the home care worker, we're talking about the DCFS worker, we're talking about some of those direct provider services that do work with the state in making sure that they receive their funds. I was delighted to hear the governor acknowledge at 5%, that was universities, he acknowledged increasing the line on all those social services programs to ensure that the workers are paid adequately for the minimum wage increase. Then he went a step further and said he would also do a 5% increase in our universities across the board, which is really compelling because our previous governor spent years decimating our university system. He's going to do an additional $50 million for the MAP grant, which is those students that I described, making minimum wage, those parents that are making minimum wage, which would allow them an opportunity now to receive assistance for higher education. 15,000 additional people will be able to get the MAP grant if they're in a higher education situation. And then the second year students of our AIM High. So these are our students that are really outstanding, the best and brightest. We don't want them to leave the state of Illinois. And what we're finding is that they're going to neighboring states because we're not allowing them enough support to keep them here. So the AIM High program would also receive $35 million of additional support, and early childhood education, $100 million. K through 12 would also make sure we give them the money that we set forth in the school funding formula, but an additional $25 million on top of that. So it's good that we're saying we're going to put the money where we're supposed to. It's also good to hear that we're going to generate more revenue, and it was very pleasing to hear the governor say that we're all one state of Illinois, so we have to make sure everyone's working. We've got to make sure that there's an investment in Black communities, that there's new entrepreneurs being created, there's jobs being created. So it was really invigorating to hear the governor say, I want to work with everyone. We have hard work ahead. This will not be an easy fix, but I'm telling you the truth. This is our situation. We want a balanced budget, and here's how we get there. Answer it this way. I think we need to wrap our minds around capital. We definitely need a capital bill that we have not had over a decade. It's really important that we invest in the infrastructures of all of our communities. That's roads, that's bridges, that's helping our municipalities with more fire trucks and engines and police departments and things that we need for public safety. So it's really important that the entire caucus is where I'll be spending time as the majority leader, sharing with our membership that we've got to get the capital bill right. We have to make sure that investments are done properly as it relates to capital.
Right. Senator Jill Tracy of the 47th District, what was your takeaway of the governor's budget address?
Well, you know, there's always anticipation when there's a budget address, and this is the first time of this administration to do one. And so, you know, certainly you want to find the common ground that as a Republican I can agree with the Democrat administration. I'm about jobs and making our economy grow. That we can agree on. I'm not sure I like the assumptions that his budget was based on. It's an assumption of raising about over $1 billion in revenues, and that's taxes, and taxes usually come from the people in Illinois. So I'm concerned about that as a starting point because we've gotten into overspending problems in the past, and kind of has led to our financial situation right now. So beginning at that starting point to me is troublesome. I'm open to review and analyze his idea of not making the full pension payment. He wants to borrow $2 billion, and that, you know, there again that's a similar problem we've had in the past that didn't work well. So, but I want to see how the bond houses analyze this idea of changing the ramp of the pension payment. But the problem is we need to fund these pensions. It's a liability, and skipping that payment or not making the full payment doesn't getting us closer to actually getting where we need to be a funded pension system. So. I will applaud him for his just forthrightness and telling us exactly what he wants to accomplish. I don't want people to continue to leave Illinois, and I'm worried with this minimum wage increase that just came in a 2 weeks of session very quickly and already signed into law. I'm worried that a lot of small businesses are very fearful downstate of how they're going to stay in business, and then I'm worried that will lead to unemployment in our downstate area, or people leaving the state of Illinois to find other employment. You know, it's time will tell. The nuts and bolts begin with the legislative process, and that will begin our appropriations. We'll start with a framework and try to appropriate. You know, certainly we want to appropriate and fund the vital services, education, higher education, you know, things like that. I was a little disappointed that he didn't mention the Quincy Veterans Home. That's very important to me, but I have a firm commitment from the administration that they will move to take care of that. So, and when I analyze that budget that we just got, you know, perhaps that's buried in there somewhere, but, you know, that's very important to me, is that we fund the Quincy Veterans Home that's already begun.
I like the optimism. I mean, he acknowledged we had problems and he set a path forward, but at the end of the day, I think he was optimistic that we can get through this issue. So that was a good change of tone compared to the past few years. So we need to be optimistic. We need a path forward.
The governor spoke a little bit about, you know, or rather reminded folks of his commitment to education, early childhood education, K-12 education, higher ed. What are your thoughts there for the Rockford area? I mean, with the new funding formula sort of underway over this will be maybe the second year of that formula implemented. He's added a little bit more money to it under these austere times. Is that good for the community? What do you think the reaction in Rockford school districts are going to be?
I think it'll be good for the Rockford School District for sure. And I think we need to point out, I would argue this is a relatively conservative budget. Compared to last year, spending for the most part is held flat. The increases in spending are for education, specifically for the school funding formula, which has greatly benefited the Rockford School District. Rockford received millions of dollars in additional money through the school funding formula, and the governor's commitment to add more money means good news for Rockford students and teachers and the quality of education in our community. So, if you're going to spend money, that's where we should put our investments. That's going to help our state in the long term.
Thank you for watching the Illinois Channel. You may also wish to follow us online, where you are free to make comments or program suggestions. Get our breaking news updates on Twitter, where you can find us at Illinois Channel. You can find our past programming on YouTube at youtube.com/Illinois Channel TV. Or you can go to the Illinois Channel website at illinoischannel.org. There you can find not only our current video stories and programs, but also our library of past programs, as well as articles that provide additional information about Illinois issues and individuals.